Shvatov. We are learning Mishna Nazir, and we are in Perek Beis, Chapter 2, Mishnah Ches, Mishnah 8. Now, this Mishnah is continuing from the previous Mishnah, where a person said that when I have a valad, when I have a child, I will become a Nazir. So, when you say child, it means boy, girl, whatever the child may be. Now, here the case is the following. When a person, the little intro is that when a person says, when I have a child, it means a viable child. It means a child that can live. That's what a person means. Now, Mishnah Ches begins, he pila ishtay. Let's say his wife lost the child. Okay? Which does not here mean a miscarriage. Here it means the baby died shortly after birth. And we do not know if it was born being able to live or not. And what that means is like this. The fact that, I'm going to read to you from the bottom, the way the notes explained it here. The fact that the child died shortly after being born does not prove that it was born unable to live. It might have died from something that happened to it after it was born, an infection, whatever. In general, the rule is that if the child was carried a full 9 months before being born, we assume that it had fully developed and was born fit to live. This birth would then fulfill the condition of when I have a child. On the other hand, if the child was not full term, we would assume it died because it was not fully developed. It would then not fulfill the condition of having a child. The Mishnah speaks of a case where we do not know if it was carried a full 9 months. Thus, we do not know whether its birth fulfilled the condition of the father's vow. Meaning we don't know it was full term. If we know it was full term, then we don't know if this was a child that was able to live or not. So that we're left with a suffix, we're left with a doubt. He made a vow, I'll become a Nazir when I have a child. We don't know here if he had a child. So that means we have a suffix, we have a doubt. Now, if we have a doubt, what do you think we should do? I mean, we're just going to ignore Naziris? How do you do that? So at the end of the day, the Mishnah says, the first opinion of the Mishnah is, ain't a Nazir, he's not a Nazir. Because according to the Tanakama, when a person makes a vow to be a Nazir, he means to be a Nazir under definite conditions. If he's left with a doubt, he never meant to make himself a Nazir then. That's what the Tanakama holds. Rabbi Shimon says no. Savek Naziris lahachmer, which means you have a doubt about Naziris, you got to be stringent. Which means we don't say that a person, when he says, I'm going to be a Nazir, it's under the conditions where everything is certain, there are no doubts. So what do you do now? You have a doubt, you have a question. Now, so we have a doubt, is he a Nazir or not? All right, so let him just be a Nazir, and let him just bring the karbanis in case. You know, like we say, Savik lahachma, you have a doubt, be stringent, and just do it. But you can't. There's two problems. I'm going to read here from the bottom what the issue here is. There are two concluding rituals that are forbidden to a non-Nazir. Meaning there are two things that a Nazir does at the end of his Naziris term that you cannot do if you're really not a Nazir. That is head shaving and offering a chatas. Head shaving is forbidden to a non-Nazir since it violates Torah's prohibition against shaving the corners of the head. When a Nazir shaves his head, right, he shaves his entire head. That includes his payas, right? Now the Torah says about a Nazir, okay, that's what he has to do. But if you're not a Nazir, you can't do it. So if you're not really a Nazir, right? If you didn't make yourself a real Nazir, a suffix Nazir, how can you do that part of the what you do at the end of Naziris? You're not allowed to do it. Another thing is a chatas is a type of offering that may not be brought unless it is required. Since a Nazir out of doubt might in fact not be a Nazir, is forbidden to perform either of these concluding rituals. Meaning, you can't sometimes you can bring a carbon, let's say you have a doubt, I don't know, do I need to bring a carbon oil or not? Right? So just bring a carbon oil, it's a big deal. You don't have to bring a carbon oil only if you're obligated. But a chatas, a sin offering, which is one of the karbanas of a Nazir at the conclusion of his term, is something you can't just bring in case I sinned. It doesn't work that way. It has to be that a carbon chatas has to be brought when you know that you have sinned. Because in case you didn't sin, you can't bring a carbon chatas then. So these are the issues that this person who is a suffix Nazir has to deal with. Now, according to the Tanna Kama, the first opinion, he's not a Nazir because a person doesn't make himself a Nazir. If it comes out, he never intends to make himself a Nazir. If it comes out, then he's left with it out. But according to Rabbi Shimon, that he does, that a person still would. A person doesn't necessarily think about these things to say, oh, I wouldn't be a Nazir if I had a case of a suffix, or, that's not what goes on his mind when he's making the Naziris. And we don't say that, well, if it'd be a suffix, you would never do it. So what do you do here? So it says Rabbi Shimon like this. He basically is going to make a condition. He's going to make the Naziris he's going to perform now is going to be conditional. Yoimar, he's going to say, Im haya ben kayama, if the child that was born was a child that was full term and therefore could have lived on its own, hare ani nazir chayva. Then my Naziris now is an obligation. It's the fulfillment. It's the vow that I took to be a Nazir if I have a child. It now takes effect. And that's what I have to do. V'im lav, if the child was not a child that could live, hareni nazir nedava. I'm a voluntary Nazir. So he's covering everything. At the end of the day, does he have to bring it? He does have to bring it. Either he has to bring it because of the vow that he made, or he has to bring it because right now he's taking upon himself a new Naziris. So that covers all his bases. So far, when we have this case of the woman, the child died shortly after being born. We have a suffix. Did she carry a full term, not full term? And therefore we have a question, a doubt. Was this child able to really live or not? Tanna Kama says, suffix Naziris, person never wants to put himself in that kind of situation when there's a doubt about the Naziris. Rabbi Shimon says a person would, and you got to make a condition. You say, if now I'm fulfilling my vow of Naziris that I made if I have a child, that's what I'm doing now. And if I didn't have a child, and therefore now I don't have to do the Naziris, but since I'm not sure, I'm going to go ahead now and make a vow. I'm going to take upon myself a voluntary Naziris now. And therefore everything's covered. All right. The story continues. Chaz Rabbi Yolda, this same woman who before had this child we had a doubt about, now has a child. The child's good, fine, living. No questions about this child. Okay? Now, let's remember something. According to the Tanna Kama, right, he made a vow for Naziris, right? He said, when I have a child, I will be a Nazir. Now, the question was the child before a child or not? Okay, so a person says, a person never wants to put himself in a situation of Naziris, of a suffix Naziris. Doesn't put himself in a question of doubtful Naziris. So therefore, when he made his vow to be a Nazir if he has a child, he never meant that kind of situation. Fine. But he still made a vow. And the vow was never fulfilled. So now that he has a child, now he becomes a Nazir. This is now the fulfillment of the Nazir vow that he made before, if I have a child. Okay. That works good according to the Tanna Kama. But according to Reb Shimon, right, who said before he's going to observe a Naziris that is either his obligation or voluntary, right? So now that he has another child, we have another question again. The question is, okay, did you fulfill the Naziris before with the child that died because it was a child that could live, or did I not? If I did, then I don't have to be a Nazir now. But if I didn't, I do have to be a Nazir now. So now what does he do? So says the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon says, Yoimar, in this situation the person says, Emarishan ben Kayama, Harishan Chayva Bezunadava. If the first child was a child that could live, then the first Naziris, that was an obligation. And what I'm doing now is voluntary, is a new one. The Imlav, but if the one before, the child before was not a child that could live, which means the Nazir, then Rishona Arisha Nadava, the first Naziris I observed before, that was Nadava, that was voluntary, that was not a fulfillment of my vow. Vizu Chayva, and this one is the obligation. This is the child now that I have to observe Naziris as a fulfillment of the vow that I made before. So basically, according to Rabbi Shimon, at each stage, you have to make a condition to say that when I want to do a Naziris to cover everything, it's conditional. Either it's going to be, in the first case, it's either going to be an obligation in each case it's going to work, it's going to be that way. In some form or another, he's making a condition that, well, if it's supposed to be obligatory, then it's the obligatory one. If it's not, then it's the voluntary one. It's the new one. Just that, he has to change the wording of the condition depending on what stage that he's in. Have a wonderful day and a good Tavach Shavuot Tov. Shalom, shalom.